I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. You can see it right there. Today, we are reviewing Stephen King's short novel, The Mist. Now, if you know, I have been reviewing all the Stephen King novels in order, a publication order, and we're to The Mist. In fact, we're to Skeleton Crew, which is a book of short stories that Stephen King wrote. The Mist is a short novella that's at the front of the Skeleton Crew. I wanted to review it separately from the rest of the short stories in there, but we will get to the short stories that are in there in my next review. So, The Mist. Let's talk about The Mist by Stephen King. I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. I remember reading it the first time and loving it then. I remember reading it again when the movie was coming out not long ago, just to refresh myself on what the movie was going to be about. And then I read it again a third time here. I listened to it on audible.com. The same narrator that did The Outsider also did The Mist. He's a great narrator. Props to him. It was a good narration. And then when I get to the Skeleton Crew, the whole thing we'll talk about, there's a lot of different narrators for each story in there, but we'll talk about that when I get to it. Mist, The Mist. If you've seen the movie, you know about it. If you haven't, and if you haven't read the books, no spoilers here. I will just give you a general outline of what's happening. The Mist, though, takes place in Maine, mostly inside of a grocery store, where a storm has come. Stephen King said he got the inspiration for The Mist. He went shopping once with his young son during a huge, awful storm, and he was in the grocery store as the storm sort of rattled the grocery store around a little bit, and he thought of this story based off of that real life experience of being in that store with a raging storm outside, and that's what's happening here in The Mist. It's not a raging storm, but the people are shopping in the store, and the mist just descends upon this small town in Maine and just envelops the store, and you can't see outside of the store for more than like 5 or 6 feet because the mist is so dense. And then there's like creepy monsters in the mist, and people start leaving the store, and you can see that they're getting killed in gruesome ways just beyond the mist. And so that's the setup of the story. It's got some great characters. I reviewed The Cycle of the Werewolf not long ago, where I talked about it was another short novel of Stephen King's, and I talked about in The Cycle of the Werewolf how I didn't like that story because none of the characters were really developed at all in such a short. And I thought Stephen King needed a bigger chunk of space. Like The Cycle of the Werewolf would have been a much better novel had it been 500 pages rather than 130 pages, because Stephen King could have explored the characters. Well, this is a short novel also where he does a very good job of exploring the characters. So, that being said, for such a short novel, I love the characters in this book. I mean, he really made us understand who they all were. Like the main character is David Drayton and his son Billy. They're the ones in the store kind of representing Stephen King and his son. And there's another woman named Amanda Dumfries. There's a lot of other characters in there. I won't name them all. Amanda Dumfries, though, is probably the main one. Dumfries, people mispronounce my name Durfee, Dumfrey, all the time. So I kind of had like an affinity for her just because of that. But, a lot of characters, and there's some religious characters in here, and as you know, anybody that's a religious fanatic in a Stephen King novel just comes off looking like a crazy person. And there's one of the more classic religious fanatics that Stephen King's ever written is in The Mist, and she kind of screws around with the story and screws around with the characters, and she thinks it's Armageddon. This mist is the advent, and it's the precursor to Armageddon, and so she's calling everybody to repentance all the time, and it's quite frankly, it's got some of the more humorous scenes with dealing with the religious fanaticism. I loved it. I love the characters. For such a short novel, he really does do character really well in this novel. I can't recommend this enough. If you just want to read a real quick Stephen King book that you can sit and read just in a day, even less than a day, you can read it in 3 or 4 hours if you want, and you can love it. And then you can watch the movie, and the movie follows the story pretty darn close. No spoilers here, but in the book they talk about the people think that the Mist might be some sort of creation of this military base that's nearby that does secret experiments called the Arrowhead Project. And if you know about Stephen King novels, you know this is a common theme in Stephen King novels, you know, the secret military base that does secret chemical experiments or supernatural experiments on humans, you know, that was in Firestarter, it was in The Stand, it's in The Mist, you know, that's what people believe it is, you know. It's, you know, which makes sense, you know. Why would this mist envelop the store and not leave for days on end? And there's creepy reptilian monsters out in the mist that's just sort of banging on the windows of the store and banging on the back doors of the store. And anybody who peeps their head out of the store just gets killed in a real gruesome way. Again, it's one of Stephen King's. I categorize Stephen King's novels into two different camps: the monster novels and like the supernatural thrillers. And this one falls into the monster novel camp where, you know, around every corner there's a scare, a boo, there's monsters killing people, there's monsters out in the mist just like waiting to get you. It's really cool. Really cool. And I love the movie also. I highly recommend both the book and the movie. You can't go wrong with either one, and it would be better if you read both because it's funner that way. You get two stories in one. So I rate Stephen King novels from 1 to 10 every time. I give this about a 7.5. Again, I love the longer novels, so the longer novels are always going to get a higher rating for me than the shorter novels. Had this been like a 500-page novel called The Mist, and it was just set in the grocery store and people were getting plucked out of the grocery store for 500 pages, I would have loved this book a whole lot more. It would have been rated about a 9.5. But I'm dropping it a couple stars just because it's so short, and I don't like his shorter works. I love his longer works. So 7.5 out of 10. Again, before I end, every novel I write, I dedicate to Stephen King, Motley Crue, and the Oakland Raiders, because those were the three most important things to me as a kid, so they get a shout out in every novel I write. So here we go, The Mist. If you want to read a good novel that's short by Stephen King, that won't take up too much of your time, The Mist is a good place to start. Go get it.